The title of the most dangerous place on the planet rightfully belongs to the Amazon basin. Is there anything else there besides dangerous animals? Well, there are humans. Humans who have been living, more like surviving, side by side with the most dangerous predators on the planet. The most ordinary day of the most ordinary anaconda goes like this. It wakes up, dives into the water, finds a delicious caiman, and has breakfast. Now the snake's good for a week. But sometimes the water is literally gone. When the Amazon River becomes shallow after a flood, floating islands emerge on its surface. They're made up of aquatic and semi-aquatic plants that crowd together, sink, float, and eventually form large discs. Locals call them matupas, but you should tread lightly on their surface. On these islands, you can stumble across jaguars, pumas, caimans, and dangerous Amazonian snakes. The locals even say the floating islands are home to the mythical giant anaconda. Of course, no one's seen it. Well, I really wouldn't want to check. This snake is not even venomous, though in the Amazon rainforest there are plenty of snakes that can kill you with just one bite. The Yawanawa, a tribe of 1,250 people living in the heart of the Brazilian Amazon, was never bothered by snakes. It's believed that throughout their entire history, this tribe hasn't seen a single casualty from a venomous snake bite. That is, the snakes, of course, did bite them, but each of the victims was successfully healed with the help of plants. To be more precise, thanks to the knowledge of more than 2,000 medicinal plants passed down from generation to generation. Even Steve couldn't find such plants on Google, while the Yawanawa gradually realized they had healing properties and put them to good use over the years. Perhaps these unknown plants could be the key to other cures for diseases humanity suffers from. While scientists are working on that now, we're diving deep into the forest to find a lake full of electric eels? If that doesn't sound scary enough, let me explain. There are over 100 adult electric eels living in a tiny lake. And this is weird because eels are considered solitary creatures. And these ones have learned not only to coexist, but also to band together to hunt. First, they herd small fish into packs. Then about 10 eels gather in a hunting party, similar to wolves, and hit their victims with an electric current. That's totally unusual behavior, considering that this electric eel is a fish and fish rarely hunt in parties. This, of course, is also dangerous for a human who might accidentally fall into the lake. It's one thing to get a discharge from a lone eel, but several eels ganging up on you is an entirely different story. I was wondering what discharge these 10 eels can produce when they act together. And here's what I found out. According to scientist David D. Santana, one eel of this species can produce a discharge of up to 860 volts, which means 10 individuals can generate 8,600 volts. This is around the same voltage required to power 100 light bulbs. How about water that doesn't need eels to kill? Because it's boiling, literally. You can find this deadly water in the central part of the Peruvian Amazon, in a river about 5.5 miles long. True, only about 3.8 miles on the lower part of the river are hot, but believe me, this is enough. Most of the flow, especially during the dry season, is hot enough to kill you. Not instantly, of course, but small mammals, reptiles, or amphibians regularly fall in and are boiled alive. In the end, bones are the only thing that's left of them. Sometimes the water temperature reaches 200 degrees Fahrenheit. When you walk along the bank of this boiling river, you need to be extremely careful. Perhaps you're wondering why the hell the river's boiling in the first place. After all, there are no geothermal areas or volcanoes nearby, and frankly, scientists are not completely sure why the water heats up to such an anomalous temperature. The most plausible theory says that rainwater gets into deep fissures in the Earth's crust, gets closer to the mantle where it reaches the boiling point. Well, then it merrily rushes through the jungle trying to cook everything in its path. But you know what really shocked me? The locals bathe in this river. Yeah, they really swim there and stay alive. Okay, this only happens after heavy rains when cold water dilutes the boiling water of the river. At other times, the water from the river is used for making tea and cooking. Well, that looks convenient. You come to the river in the morning, scoop boiling water into a mug, boiled anacondas floating by. Amazing. Mosquitoes are the only thing that ruins this paradise. Of course, they don't live in every corner of the Amazon forest. For example, there are almost no mosquitoes near the tributary of the Rio Negro. This is due to the acidic pH of the river. But Rio Branco is a mosquito heaven because its waters are rich in minerals. If you go there at night, at dawn or dusk, this is the... Hey, I can't focus like that. Phew. Now we can continue. Night, dawn, and dusk are the favorite times for mosquitoes when they go hunting, and it becomes impossible to avoid them. The particular type of mosquito that carries malaria, the female Anopheles, only bites between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. But there's also yellow fever, dengue, chikungunya, and Zika virus, and they're also carried by mosquitoes. But there are people living in these forests, you might say. Aren't they always at risk of getting a deadly disease? Well, it's both yes and no. The Korowai tribe, which actually lives in Indonesia, has found an amazing solution to this problem. They build houses in trees. Perhaps one of our viewers did something similar in childhood. Just make it several times higher, and you'll get a typical Korowai dwelling. It can accommodate up to 12 people, plus pets, and mosquitoes simply can't reach this height. Neither can floods, evil spirits, and some unfriendly neighbors. However, the majority of these houses stand on poles about 26 to 39 feet above the ground. This is also good enough. The Amazon tribes use a slightly different approach. The Korubu tribe plaster clay on their skin to repel mosquitoes. Other tribes prefer vegetable dyes, which also work as an insect repellent. They also draw stripes on the body, and it really helps. Scientists even conducted a study, gathered statistics, and came to a clear conclusion. When you're not striped, you look twice as delicious for any bloodsuckers. By the way, zebra stripes work the same. Actually, this Korubo tribe, or rather a group, is a very interesting example of a community that lives in almost complete isolation. That is, they have no idea what's going on in the outside world. They have their own world. And if you try to invade it, you can pay with your life. There are other uncontacted tribes in the forest of the Amazon. In the Brazilian state of Acre, one tribe that seems to live quite well. Their people grow food, build huts, hunt with arrows and spears, and they have zero interest in joining the rest of mankind. One of the tribes greeted a helicopter flying over the village with a barrage of arrows. Perhaps it was a pretty clear message. But the most interesting thing is that some of these uncontacted tribes use steel weapons. Take, for example, a tribe that Brazilian officials call the Isolated Indians of the Upper Humaisha. Since 1910, there were reports of them raiding settlements and stealing machetes and axes. This has happened so often, and stolen metal weapons have been used for so long that it almost became part of their culture. The tools made it possible to clear large enough parts of the forest, plant more food, and thrive. And as I said, these people aren't going to share their prosperous life with anyone, even if it's at the Neolithic level, or even if the person who came to them only wanted to help. Rieli Franciscato, an expert on isolated tribes of the Amazon, has been protecting them all his life. He died approaching a group of indigenous peoples. An arrow hit him just above the heart, and the wound turned out to be fatal. Knowing this and hearing stories of raids, you can see why the locals try to stay away from aggressive neighbors. The forest tribes dig very deep holes in the ground for hiding. That's very convenient. It protects both from people and animals, and perhaps from satellite images. Okay, let's leave people alone. We can all be pretty dangerous no matter how isolated we are. Let's get back to what this channel is really about. So, a fish that can crawl into a human body! Meet Candiru, a tiny freshwater fish found only in the upper Amazon and Orinoco basins. Candiru feeds on the blood of other fish, often looking like a translucent worm. So it's difficult to spot it in muddy water. But the most terrifying, and at the same time interesting thing, are the stories about the Candiru's interest in human genitalia. For example, locals often warn tourists not to urinate while swimming under any circumstances because a tiny Candiru can crawl right up in this very spot. The fish is very slippery. Moreover, it has spines near the mouth to attach itself to the prey. Once inside, the parasite bites until it finds a suitable source of blood and begins to feed. And that's actually the best case scenario. The good news is that although there are quite a few stories of Candiru attacks, there are almost no confirmed cases. Some researchers actually think these are myths, superstitions, or tasteless anecdotes. Whatever the case, the locals still make a special protection from coconut shells and palm leaves with a tiny hole for human needs. Well, you know, better safe than sorry. They don't know what official science has to say about this, but the American marine biologist Stephen Spotty thoroughly studied all the stories about the bloodthirsty Candiru and stated even if a person relieves himself in the stream with a Candiru presence, the chances of an attack are negligible. I quote, "The chances are about the same as being struck by lightning while simultaneously being eaten by a shark." Sounds pretty safe. But only unless the poor guy's swimming at the mouth of the Catatumbo River, the most lightning-struck place on Earth. Thunderstorms occur at least 160 nights a year here. Sometimes this figure rises up to 300. They last 10 hours a day, with lightning flashing from 16 to 40 times per minute. Well, it's clear that with thunderstorm activity this high, the probability of dying from a lightning strike is much higher here than anywhere else. Not the best place to swim. Good thing there are no sharks in Catatumbo.